excited to be here with you to continue our series, Doubt It. We're going to continue our conversation about doubts and questions. Last week, we looked at the story of John the Baptist and discovered that you are not alone in your questions. This week, we're going to look at another story on how God responds when people ask for evidence before they choose to believe. But before we dive into that, who here has seen Zootopia? If you have, you can drop your favorite emoji down in the comments. If you haven't, let me fill you in real quick because I'm going to show you a movie clip here in a minute. Judy Hopps is a rabbit, the first to ever join the police force of Zootopia. It's not an easy job, but Judy is committed to solving a mysterious case where formerly intelligent animals seem to be turning savage. Watch what happens when Judy makes a big break in the case.
I thought this was just a missing mammal case, but it's way bigger. Mr. Otterton did not just disappear. I believe he and this jaguar, they went savage, sir.
Savage? This isn't the Stone Age, Hops. Animals don't go savage.
I thought so too. Till I saw this. What? He was right here!
The savage jaguar?
Sir, I know what I saw. He almost killed us.
Or maybe any aggressive predator looks savage to you rabbits. Let's go!
Wait, sir. I'm not the only one who saw him. Nick.
You think I'm going to believe a fox?
Well, he was a key witness, and I enlisted...
2 days to find the otter. Or you quit. That was the deal. Badge.
But, sir, we...
Badge!
Judy discovered an important clue in this case, but she's struggling to convince her boss about what she's found. Her evidence has gone missing. Now, if you've ever seen the movie, you know we're meant to side with Judy because we have seen that same evidence that she has. But in real life, I understand where Chief Bogo is coming from. Evidence is important. I know sometimes it's hard to even believe stories you're told by your friends and family. And if you know my husband, Brandon, at all, you know he's a great storyteller, but sometimes you just have to wonder, is what you're telling me true, and how can you prove it to me? I need proof that it actually happened the way you're telling me it did. And with that, we're gonna have you pause the video and go over some discussion questions with the group. We are so excited to try this new way to communicate and process what we are learning and experiencing during this unique time in our country and our world right now. So share your thoughts down below in the comments. nearly every area of our lives, investigating and fact-checking others' claims is not only reasonable, it's celebrated. But when it comes to our faith, asking for evidence, investigating, and fact-checking is sometimes looked down upon or even shamed. Some people talk about faith in God as if faith means blind trust. But I disagree. Having faith in God doesn't mean we can't also have evidence that supports what we believe. Let's take a look at a guy who is often used as an example of not having faith and doubting God. He even earned himself the nickname Doubting Thomas. Here's what's happening. Jesus has just been crucified and the disciples were devastated. Imagine, these people thought Jesus had come to save them, but then he died. Jesus' followers were mourning, afraid, and probably a little ashamed to think that maybe they'd been wrong about everything. But then, days after his death, stories started to spread that people have seen Jesus. People were understandably pretty excited. Then Jesus shows up to see all of his disciples, that is, everyone except Thomas. So when the other disciples tell Thomas that Jesus is back from the dead, he's skeptical. I'd probably be skeptical too, because dead people usually stay dead. So in John 20:24 through 29, it says this: One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound in his side." So let's get ready for our second round of questions. Again, be sure to pause the video and share your thoughts and questions in the comments. you had some great discussion and are ready to jump into the rest of the story, because it didn't end there. Thomas didn't just say he wouldn't believe until he saw his wounds and could touch them. Jesus came with a solution to his doubts. Picking up in John 20, verse 26, it says this: 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas explained. Then Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." This news was so unbelievable that Thomas says he'll only believe if he not only sees, but can also put his finger through the wounds in Jesus' flesh. But then look what happens. Jesus actually shows up. However, he didn't say, "Oh, Thomas, you doubted me, so I'm done with you. Bye, Felicia." He didn't do that. Did Jesus get angry at Thomas for not having more faith? No. Did Jesus punish Thomas for not believing in the news immediately? No. Did Jesus shame Thomas for his questions and doubts? No. Did Jesus do what Thomas asked? Yes. He showed his scars and let Thomas touch them. This story might be shocking or even confusing to you if you have ever been told that if you have had faith, you wouldn't need to ask God for proof of anything. That asking God for answers or evidence means you're lacking faith, that it's wrong or shameful to question God. If that's what you've been told, you might see Thomas's behavior here as embarrassing or shameful. But if you were here last week, we learned that it's natural to ask questions. And right now, we're going to give you another opportunity, because you're not alone in your doubts, and it is natural to ask questions. And this is your chance. So please pause the video and drop those thoughts and questions into the comments. sure Thomas wasn't the only disciple who needed evidence to believe in Jesus' resurrection, but he's the only disciple we know of who asked for it. The book of John, where we just read the story about Thomas, was written about 50 years after Jesus ascended to heaven. So it was written to a community of Jesus followers who had never seen Jesus in the flesh. Even those early believers needed reassurance that Jesus really did rise again. It must have been so comforting to see Thomas asking the same kinds of questions they might have been asking 50 years later. Jesus' words to Thomas must have resonated deeply with them too. Jesus told Thomas he got to see Jesus in the flesh, but that there would be future followers of Jesus who would not get that privilege. Jesus said future believers would have to base their belief on other kinds of evidence and that they would be blessed for it. This story of Thomas demanding evidence isn't shameful, it's essential. Through Thomas's interactions with Jesus, we see that no matter what our doubts or questions are, Jesus is willing to meet us where we are, and that Jesus can handle our doubt. The story of Thomas is only one story in Scripture where followers of God ask for evidence before believing what they'd heard about God was true. And it's through stories like the one we just read about and others that we learn a very important truth about God. God doesn't shame us for our questions. Instead, God gives us the evidence we need in order to believe. Some of us are more skeptical than others. If you've ever taken a personality test, you know that we all function a little bit differently. These tests tell us about all the ways we are different and unique. Some of us are more introverted, and others are more extroverted. Some of us like to take charge, and others like to follow along. Some of us are relaxed and laid back, where others are more easily excited. Some of us are driven by our feelings and intuition, and others are driven more by thoughts, logic, and reason. And none of these traits are better or worse than the others. They're just different ways of being human. But it's important to understand how we're wired because our personalities can impact the way we know and experience God. If you are more feelings-oriented, you are likely to experience God through emotions and intuition, and that's great. But if you're more logic-oriented, you're likely to experience God through thoughts and reason, and that's great too. If I had to guess, I'd say that Thomas was a pretty logical person. He needed hard evidence in order to believe, and God was okay with that. Being skeptical isn't a character flaw or a lack of faith. When Thomas struggled to believe, he humbly asked God for evidence, and God provided it. Being more feelings-oriented isn't a flaw either. Wherever you are, here's what I know to be true of Thomas and what I know to be true of you. We want to know Jesus is real more than we want answers to our questions. Notice that Thomas didn't pull out a list of questions when Jesus showed up. He was simply excited that Jesus was there. And if he showed up in your room tonight, I bet the last thing you would do is pull out a list of all your questions. So what does that mean for us? What if we still need evidence in order to believe today? What kind of evidence does God provide? So let's talk about that. Let's get ready for our last discussion break of the night. Pause that video and keep commenting with your thoughts, doubts, and questions. We love being in community where we can ask hard, silly, or maybe even dumb questions without judgment, and we hope that this has been a place for you to do that. So let's dive into our last set of questions. that you have all enjoyed yourselves tonight and sought answers to some of the questions you may have had. We also want you to remember that you don't have to wait until Sunday or Wednesday night to ask these questions. Reach out. Brandon, myself, and our other awesome leaders are here for you guys. And not only is it natural to have questions, it's also natural to want to be in community all the time, not just on church days. And let's face it, guys, we've got plenty of time these next couple weeks. So we're here for you. If you still have more questions, reach out to one of us or another trusted adult in your life, and we will see you next week.